Everybody, it's John from EWILogic.com coming to you today with a tutorial for breath control of Kontakt, Native Instruments flagship sampler. So let's dive right in. First thing we're going to do is we're going to launch Kontakt. Now when Kontakt opens up, you'll most likely see something that looks sort of like this. You'll have all your instruments here and then a blank window. I'm going to close down the browser because I just want to see the workspace. And then I'm going to go right up here to this little disk icon and I'm going to say New Instrument. And that gives us this view. Then I'm going to go right over here to this little wrench and I'm going to click on it and that opens up the editor for the instrument editor. Okay, so now we need a sound source, a sample of some sort. If you're following along the tutorial on EWILogic.com, you can download the EWI sawtooth sample from there. There will be a link to this in the description of this video, so I'll provide the sample for you. So download that sample, and once you've done that, we're going to go to our mapping editor right here. We're going to click on that, and that opens up this window. So we're going to take our EWI sample, sawtooth sample, and we're going to drop it right in here just like that. Now I want to make sure that my root is set to C3, and I want to then go over here to key range, and I want to just grab this, and I'm just going to drag it down to C-2, and then I want to go over here, and I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to drag up, drag it again until it says G8. So now I have taken this sample and I have spread it over the entire range of the MIDI keyboard, all 127 notes from C-2 to G8. Once we finish that, we're done with that. There's nothing else that we're going to do in the mapping editor. So we're going to close this down. Then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go right here to our amplifier section. And we're going to look for this little box called Mod, or Modulation Source. We're going to click on that, and it opens up our modulators attached to our amplifier. Now we're going to delete these by right-clicking and selecting Delete. We're going to delete that one and that one. So now we no longer have any modulators here. Now if I play this, what you're going to hear is this. No real expressiveness, just a raw synth sample. So not very interesting, not very fun to play either. So now what we're going to do is we're going to click on this Add Modulator button. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to add an envelope. And we're going to say envelopes, flexible envelope. And that brings us to here. So now we see down here our envelope that's going to control volume in our amplifier. Now if I play it, this is what happens. All in all, definitely not an improvement. So what's happening there? Well, on the left side of this, right here, you have what's called the attack portion of the envelope. This is how long it takes from either when a key is pressed, or in this case, when you blow into your EWI, how long it takes from the initial onset of the note for it to reach its peak amplitude, i.e. its loudest point. Then this section, right here between these 2 points, is what's called the decay section. This is the decay from peak amplitude, how long it takes for the sound to decay back to its sustain level, which is the level at which the sound is going to sustain until the key is released. And that release point is right here. And then what you have here is the amount of time it takes from the moment the key is released or you stop blowing until the sound reaches its null point, reaches 0 again. Now obviously this envelope is not helping our EWI articulation or attack. So what we're going to do is we're going to reshape this envelope. We're going to grab this one and we're going to pull it all the way over here. So now what I've done is I've made the attack almost instantaneous. And then here, I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to drag it all the way up. So now we have no decay between our maximum volume point and our sustained volume. There's no decay between those 2 points. I'm just going to drag this over here a little bit. And then we have this really long slope for the release. I don't want that either. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to drag it over here. And now we have a fairly short release. So now what does this sound like? Substantially different, yes? So you can hear the changes that this made in just changing that envelope. So now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go back up here to our add modulator. And we're going to add an external source, MIDI CC. And you guessed it, we're going to change it to 2, which is breath control, which is breath. Our default value Vox we're going to leave at 0. We're going to make sure that our intensity slider is all the way up, which it does default to, and we're going to make sure that it is selecting volume for its control point. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to hit the modulation shaper button, which is this guy right here. And then we're going to come here and we're going to go to preset, factory, and default. And you wind up with this. So now what this is basically a linear representation of how your volume is affecting, or excuse me, how your breath pressure is affecting volume. And that sounds something like this. As I play, if you watch, you can see the little orange dot around the volume in the amplifier moving. Now this is our maximum volume set to 0 dB. Now watch what happens. Notice that as I attack the note, it starts at around 0 or close to 0. And as I blow harder, it goes up and it reaches its max peak at 0 dB. Whatever you have this set to will be the maximum possible attainable volume at a breath pressure of 127. Now the next thing you should do is play with this curve. What happens if we change it to there? That's interesting. And then what happens if we do this? So obviously with this you have a substantial amount of volume control over the sound based on breath pressure. Should play with this curve, find what works for you. Find what works with your EWI settings and with your breath settings on your EWI. For the purposes of this demo, I'm playing an EWI USB with fairly stock settings. There's not much in the way that's been changed from the default settings that it comes from the factory. So those settings should give you basically exactly what you're hearing now. Okay. So now we have some fundamental control over volume, but the sound is still not terribly interesting. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a filter that's going to change in real time as we blow to give character to the sound. Acoustic instruments in general, as you blow harder, get brighter. So let's mimic that here. So we're going to go right up here to our group insert effects. We're going to go to add effects, EQ. We're going to go to filters, low pass, Legacy LP1. So here's our Legacy Low Pass 1 filter. We're going to go right here to our cutoff, and we're going to change that to 80 Hertz, or as close as it will allow us, 79.9. So now a low pass filter basically allows low frequencies to pass while cutting out high frequencies. So now what's happened to our sound? Listen. It's gotten substantially quieter, for one thing, and it's also substantially darker. Not necessarily what we want, but we can change that by going right here to our mod section under the low pass filter. And now we're going to add a modulator to that low pass filter. And we're going to say external source, MIDI CC, and you guessed it, number 2 for breath control. Right now we're going to just leave it linear, and we're going to change the cutoff frequency. That's this frequency right here, the cutoff frequency. Right now it's at 80. So what's going to happen is as we blow harder, the cutoff frequency is going to rise. And that's going to sound like this. So as you can hear, as I blow harder, the sound gets brighter and louder. Welcome to Psychoacoustics. Okay, next thing that we're going to do, if you listen very carefully to the sound, you'll hear that there's a little bit of a thump or a low frequency energy on the attack of every note that makes the attack jump out a bit. So you can hear that every single note, because it's being re-triggered by the envelope, you get a little tuk 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 on every attack. I don't really like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here to our instrument insert effects, and we're going to add an instrument or an effect. We're going to go to EQ, and we're going to add a 1-band EQ. We're going to change our frequency to 120 Hertz, our bandwidth to 1, and our gain to -6. Now if you notice, that's now represented right over here in our little graph. So now if I play the same thing, it's still there, but it's not nearly as noticeable and not nearly as intense. You can play with the gain reduction or the frequency reduction. You can play with the frequency, you can play with the bandwidth to set it to a place that you like, how much or how little of that articulation attack is left in the sound. And then one final thing that we may want to do for the sake of a more pleasing sound is go to our effects here and add a little reverb. And there you have it, a very fundamental, basic, wind-controlled, sampled sound in Kontakt. Now the next steps I would take would be to play with more of these modulators, add more effects, add more modulators, play with them, see what they do. And when you get it to a place that you're happy with, you go right up here to your instrument, save edited instrument as. And now we're just going to call this EWI demo, and I'm going to save that. And now I have this anytime I want it from my load menu. And that, my friends, is pretty much that. Feel free to leave comments, questions, reach out to me through the ewilogic.com website. There will be a link in the video for the sample. And like that. Happy EWIing. Thanks, guys.